Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mondays with Michelle video. This week, we're exploring Peter Higginbotham's website on the Workhouse. This is a fantastic resource with several thousand web pages of information, as well as photos, building plans, and maps. There is even a virtual tour of a workhouse. Let's get started. A lot of you have probably looked at this website before, but there are more than 2,800 pages of information. There are, I believe, over 6,000 photos. So I'm pretty certain that you won't have discovered all of the resources available on this website. So I thought it was worthwhile just taking a bit more of a look at what it offers. So one of the things you'll notice when you go to the home page, this website does have advertising. So I found that can be a little bit distracting. So you just have to be careful where you click, because you notice we've got ancestry ads over here on the right. There's advertising in the middle of the screen. There are ads at the bottom. So it can be quite a busy website. So what you want to focus on is the table of contents on the left side of the screen. And the content is going to show up in this middle section. There is a search facility at the top, and I will be showing you how to go directly to the topic you want after we've looked at navigating the table of contents. So right now we're on the home page. If we click on Introduction, it brings us to this introduction page. Now, you notice when I first clicked on introduction, it looked like it opened up a whole bunch more table of contents. That seems to be just the way this website works. Sometimes when you click on the table of contents links, it will open up a mini table of contents, and then if it doesn't apply to the topic you've clicked on, it closes it back down. So don't panic and think that something's gone wrong if you see links opening up and then closing down on the left-hand side. So the introduction and this next topic, poor laws, give you some history, some overview of the topic of workhouses and poor laws. So if you want to find out, for instance, about this poor law category, I clicked on poor law. It opens up some additional links. If I want to close that mini table of contents down, I just click on the poor law topic again, and it hides it. So the kinds of things you can see, we have poor law history, and there's an introduction page, old poor law, new poor law. You've got poor law acts, so you could see the full text of a particular poor law act. So if we click on workhouse locations, we've got a number of different items. I'm going to click on this entry that says English Poor Law Unions Summary List. And what this is showing you is the list of all the poor law unions, which were basically the governing body for the workhouse. And so for Yorkshire North Riding, we can see all of the unions listed. So if I wanted to look, for instance, at Helmsley, if I click on Helmsley, it takes me right to a detail page for that workhouse. And this is probably what most people are used to seeing. They would click on a location, go to the workhouse page, and see a map showing where that workhouse is located. There are pictures. There are links to transcripts of some census information. So we've got 1881 census transcript for the inmates. We've also got links to long-term workhouse inmates. And that was a special return that was done in 1861 by the Poor Law Board. So anyone who had been a workhouse inmate for 5 years or more, a continuous period, they did a special survey or report on that. So there are links to census records. There are links, if they know of them, to record sources, which of course would be of interest to all of us. So for instance, for the Helmsley Workhouse, they will tell you that the information is available at the North Yorkshire County Record Office, and it gives you some idea of the kinds of documents that you would find. So their minute books, the ledgers, outdoor relief lists, collector's ledger. And there's other links and bibliography. So that's kind of a typical information page for a workhouse. But there is much more than that. And I want to show you some of the other pieces of information. So if we look at the Poor Law Union maps, let's look first at an overview map. This is a clickable map. So if I click on Yorkshire, it takes me to another map that is just showing the Yorkshire Poor Law Unions. And I could have got to that map directly by, instead of clicking on Overview Map, I could have just clicked on Yorkshire, which is showing in red here on the left. So if I now click on Helmsley on this map, you can see I'm back to the detail page for the Helmsley Workhouse. So that's a useful link. The other one I want to show you is this workhouse address link. Now, in some cases, in earlier years, they would actually say born in the workhouse on a child's birth certificate. But as time went on, they didn't want to have that stigma of being born in the workhouse recorded on the documents. So they would just record the street address of the workhouse. So you might find it really handy to be able to look up the address of a workhouse if you suspect that one of your ancestors was born in a workhouse. So here we can see, for instance, for Ripon, the address of the workhouse. And Peter Higginbotham makes a note that he does not have all of the workhouse addresses listed on here. He has written a large number of books, and the encyclopedia that he created does have an extensive list of workhouse addresses. There are still quite a few listed here, and you just click on the letter of the alphabet to see the list of workhouses that are available. So for instance, they have Hull, they have Huddersfield, Holbeck. So there's quite a few of them listed. So the next place I want to look at, we looked at workhouse locations. If we click the Workhouse Life link, you can see there's all these different categories with information on what it was like in the workhouse. So if we click on classification, I thought this was interesting. It gives you the criteria and how they classified individuals when they entered the workhouse. There is information about the food and samples of the types of meals that they had. There is information about medical care. And again, it's taking that table of contents a few minutes to refresh there. So there is also information on what happened if an inmate died in the workhouse. So they talk about how they would contact the family, give them the option to arrange a funeral. If there was no other family to contact, they talk about where the inmates would be buried, and other information as to what kinds of records might be created. So again, there's a lot of useful background information. So that's the Workhouse Life section. This staff and administration, I found this was interesting just to understand the role of some of the workhouse staff. So these are the typical employees in the workhouse. So if you wanted to know, what did the matron do? Well, here's all her duties. Overseeing the admission of female paupers and pauper children under 7. Overseeing the employment and occupation of the female paupers, inspecting the sleeping quarters. So it goes into quite a bit of detail. So again, if you had ancestors who were working in the workhouse, you might find this information was useful. And you notice my table of contents seems to have disappeared. It's just because these pages of information can be very lengthy. So you have to scroll back up to the top to see that table of contents again. Now, they have information on workhouse rules, and you can go into these particular workhouses for that particular year. It will give you some idea of the rules that were in place. There is information about the inspections and visits to the workhouse and links to different reports. This particular section, Workhouse Memories, I thought was interesting. You can either go directly to an account by one of the workhouse inmates, or you can go to the gallery page, read a little bit about the individual, and then go to their direct story. So for instance, they have one for Charlie Chaplin. So you can find out a little bit about his time in the workhouse. Now, Workhouse Buildings, I have a feeling this is probably a section that most people skip when they go to the website. But when I was taking a look, I found this link called Workhouse Tour. And if we click it, it's quite interesting. It's like an interactive tour through the workhouse using all of their images and various web pages. So this is a fictitious workhouse. They say it's kind of compiled from information on a number of workhouses. So I'm just going to make the screen a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. There. So let me just turn my spotlight back on. So down here, we've got two choices. We can either find the workhouse or go home. So let's click Find the Workhouse. So here's a picture of our workhouse. It gives some information. It says we can approach the entrance. So here's the entrance going into the workhouse. So if we now enter it, there are a number of different areas we can go visit. We can look at the school and we can enter it. And it will give us some information and let us look at what that was like. Now, if I go back to the front block, I could look at the vagrants block. I can view the bathroom. I could go into a sleeping cell, pretty tiny, a stone breaking cell. So that's how the vagrants would pay for their lodging. So this was a stone breaking cell. So you can basically wander through the different rooms in the workhouse, which I thought was kind of a nice way of being able to look at the information. I love the names of their links. It says retreat to a safe distance. So we'll go back up Workhouse Lane, go home. So basically we're at the end of the tour. We're back to the home page. So underneath that Workhouse Buildings, they had the Workhouse Tour, which we just did. They do have a cottage homes tour, a district school tour, but those are more slideshows. It's just images that you page through doing next or previous. So that Workhouse Tour was a little bit of a different kind of an idea. Now, this link that says MAB was the Metropolitan Asylums Board, and this was basically for the London area as a way to deal with the medical needs for the poor. So there's information on that. There's a list of the institutions. There are links to other establishments, Quaker Workhouse, common lodging houses, and a lot of these are based in London. This link on children and education has all kinds of information. They talk about the industrial schools, and there's information on those. Now, Peter Higginbotham does have a separate website set up just with information on children in the workhouse. And I'll be talking about that either next week or the week after. So there is some overlap. He has some information on this website, but there is a lot more on his Children in the Workhouse website. There are a few links here talking about migration and emigration, particularly when it comes to their plan to send children who had been orphaned or were in the care of the Poor Law Union overseas. And in the 1850s, certainly a lot of them came to Canada. But one thing I thought was striking, look at the number of immigrants. This was in 1835 to 1836. Look at Norfolk, 3,068 emigrants, and Suffolk, 787. So if you were a child living in the workhouse in Norfolk, it's highly likely they would have shipped you off. Mostly that was to Canada in that particular period of time. Now, they have an entire section on tramps and vagrants. They talk about the casual ward, which was the term they used in many cases for the ward or the section where the vagrants would be housed. So there's a lot of information to do with vagrants, all of the different types of work they would have them do. There's some links here: tramp signs and slang, casual ward, graffiti. So again, lots of links to other sources of information. Now, as far as the art and literature, there are, again, links to humor, satire, journalism about the workhouse. Records and resources. Similarly, you've got links to the kinds of information you can look for. And we've talked about some of these previously. We've talked about the creed registers. We've talked about the admissions and discharge books, and it gives you kind of an example of what some of those records look like. We have talked about vaccination registers in the past. So you may find this section of interest, if only to get some background information on the types of records that are available and where you might be able to find them. This Workhouse Museums was an interesting link. And what surprised me was it's not just museums in England. If you scroll down, they're organized by country and then by county. There's actually a workhouse museum or museum with workhouse information in Ontario. There's the Migration Museum, the Destitute Asylum in Australia. They've got museums listed in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and quite a few in the United States. So I thought that was interesting. Now, one of the museums that they list is the Ripon Workhouse Museum and Garden. And that website is worth taking a look at. And I'll just bring up that tab. So the Ripon Museum website, if you hover over the visit link, you'll see that it is actually 3 different museums. There is the Workhouse Museum and Garden, there's a courthouse museum, and a prison and police museum. And this website services all 3. So if you click on the Explore link, there's a few different areas of interest. We have stories, and this covers not just workhouse stories, but also stories from their police museum. But this link here in their own right, The Truth About Life in the Workhouse, again, provides a lot of useful information. Some of it will be very similar to what Peter Higginbotham's website shows, but again, very useful links. What I really enjoyed was when I click on Explore and looking at this Museums from Home link. This I thought was really interesting. There's all these different categories that you can click on and find out more information. So for instance, if I click on Ripon Union Workhouse, there's all kinds of information there. I can click on their link about vagrants, stories of workhouse inmates. So it is worth looking at this website. I think it would be definitely worthwhile if you live close to go for a visit. There are all kinds of items that they have. If you click our collection, it does show you some of the information. They do have a few items listed in their online collection, but they say it's only a few. They are working to put their collection online, but it is very much a work in progress. So if we go back to Peter Higginbotham's Workhouse website, we got down to the Workhouse Museum. Peter Higginbotham does have this online Workhouse Museum site. And it's basically pictures of different artifacts in the collection. And you can scroll through them and read the little blurb about them. I did notice when I had taken a look at the About This Site section of the website and read the author section, it mentioned that Peter Higginbotham has a YouTube channel. And if you go to his YouTube channel, and I will put a link to the channel in the video handout, you'll notice that he has several series of videos. There's this 3-part series with information on the workhouse. Then he's got these 5 videos called The Workhouse in 20 Objects. And some of the objects he talks about are objects that you can see in those online museum pictures. So I think the videos on his YouTube channel are well worth watching. So we've looked at the online museum. He also has a timeline of everything to do with poor law and workhouse as far as changes in the acts. So for historical perspective, this gives you a good idea of how things changed over the years. This glossary is really useful because there are terms used that may be unfamiliar to you. So the fact that he's got a bit of a glossary on the website is handy. There's information about the workhouse in wartime. This Workhouse Myth section I found quite interesting. So he is basically debunking commonly held assumptions in terms of how we view people in the workhouse and how the workhouse is operated. There is also a quiz if you want to test your knowledge. There is a workhouse quiz, and there are also companies that do ghost hunting tours. And this About This Site link, if you click on author, it tells you a little bit not just about Peter Higginbotham, the creator of the site. It talks about the vast amount of information on the site. As I said, 6,000 photos, 1,800 maps and plans. He talks about some of the books he's written. He also mentions his other website, childrenshomes.org, and his latest project is a website just on history of the prison. There is another way to access information directly instead of going through the clickable links on the table of contents on the left-hand side of your screen. You can type information directly into the search field at the top of the screen. So for example, if I wanted to find out about the Helmsley workhouse, I would just start typing Helmsley, and you notice it comes up with items that match what I'm typing. So I would select the item I was interested. Let's go for Helmsley Union Workhouse. If I click that link, it now shows me a list of entries that match what I have put in for my search criteria. And we'll just go with this first entry, the workhouse in Helmsley. And this is a typical information page. We are seeing the information on this website for the Helmsley Workhouse. So it gives a little bit of history about the workhouse. We have the map showing the location. We have some photos, and we've got some additional links. You can also, I'll go back up to the top of the screen. You could also do a name search. So for example, I searched for my Renton ancestors. And what it will do, because this website does have extracts from the 1881 and 1861 census records of those individuals who were either working in the workhouse or inmates in the workhouse, it will come up with some links. So if we scroll down to see the matches, and you can tell these are matches for the website because you notice the URL is showing www.workhouses.org. So these are all links on this particular website that have a match for my Renton surname. Let's take a look. So if I click on this entry here, 1891 census, and I scroll down until I find the R's, and there is the Renton entry. So again, you can search the website for names of people, but other than these census extracts, most of the information on this website is not so much records on individual, it's more background information about the workhouses themselves and life in the workhouse. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to download the handout. You'll find the link in the video description at the bottom of your screen. You may have to click more to see the handout links. Thanks for watching.